The ocean never sleeps. Deep beneath the waves, the earth groans, plates shift, and in a single instant, the calm blue horizon can become a wall of destruction. On July 30th, 2025, the Earth shook violently off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. An earthquake of magnitude 8.8 ripped through the seabed, one of the strongest quakes of the decade. Within minutes, alarms echoed across the Pacific. A tsunami was on the move. Two places, thousands of kilometers apart, braced for impact. Japan, a nation scarred by 2011, armed with one of the fastest alert systems in the world. And Hawaii, a volcanic chain in the middle of the ocean, reliant on sirens, soldiers, and tourists who often don't know what to do when disaster strikes. Both were in the path of the wave. Both received the same warning. Yet what followed was a study in contrasts. Two very different societies, facing the same ocean, with the same threat rushing toward their shores. This is the story of how Japan and Hawaii confronted the tsunami of July 2025, and why their responses could not have been more different. But before we go any further, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss anything. At 10:14 p.m. local time, seismographs across Asia began to dance. The Earth had just released the energy of nearly 1,000 nuclear bombs in a matter of seconds. Off Kamchatka's rugged coast, waves of seismic energy rippled through the crust, and a towering column of water began to rise. The Japan Meteorological Agency needed just minutes to act. Within 14 minutes of the quake, they had forecast waves up to 3 meters high, issuing tsunami warnings across northern Honshu and Hokkaido. The warnings spread like wildfire, not by chance, but by design. Through the J-Alert system, a digital safety net cast over Japan, the alerts boomed from loudspeakers, appeared instantly on TV, interrupted radio, and buzzed in phones everywhere. In some towns, people had less than 20 seconds between the alarm and the first siren. But in a country drilled by history, seconds are enough. Meanwhile, more than 6,000 kilometers away, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center sent its message across the ocean. Hawaii was in danger. On Oahu, sirens wailed through the night. For locals, it was a chilling echo of drills they'd grown used to. But for many tourists, the sound was foreign, and confusion spread fast. The alarm had been sounded. Now came the true test. How fast could people move when the clock was ticking? In Japan, the response was almost mechanical in its precision. Along the northern coastlines, loudspeakers urged people to run, not walk, toward higher ground. Families grabbed their go-bags, schoolchildren followed teachers in orderly lines, and the elderly were helped into designated shelters. Evacuation signs, drilled into memory by countless school lessons and community drills, guided residents to gymnasiums, temples, and hilltop buildings. The fear was real, but the discipline was absolute. Survivors of the 2011 disaster spoke later of a familiar sinking feeling, but also of determination. They had trained for this moment. And as the black night settled over coastal towns, roads emptied, shelters filled, and Japan's east coast braced in near silence. Across the Pacific, the picture could not have been more different. In Hawaii, the sirens sent thousands rushing into the streets at once. On Oahu, traffic jammed within minutes. Families tried to flee inland. Tourists flooded convenience stores for water, and gas stations overflowed as people topped off their tanks in panic. Some locals ignored orders, climbing cliffs to watch the waves, treating the warning like a spectacle rather than a threat. The U.S. military stepped in to keep order. National Guard units opened alternative routes, helicopters circled the highways, and high-water vehicles lined the coast, ready for rescues. But the congestion was impossible to ignore. The island's geography meant there was only one way to go: up, away from the coast, and with every minute the wave drew closer. Two regions, two approaches. In Japan, evacuation looked like a coordinated drill. In Hawaii, it felt like a chaotic exodus. Both were moving, both were desperate, But the difference between preparation and improvisation was written in every street, every siren, every human decision. The ocean does not wait for human order. By the time the warnings had spread across 2 continents, the first surges were already racing across the Pacific. In Japan, all eyes were on the northern prefectures. Forecasts had warned of walls of water up to 3 meters high, the kind of waves that can flatten harbors and erase entire fishing towns. Yet, when the ocean finally arrived, it came with less fury than feared. In Iwate, waves of just over a meter swept across breakwaters, flooding harbors and tossing small boats like toys. Still dangerous, still unnerving, but not the monster wave that many had braced for. And yet, the Japanese Meteorological Agency refused to sound the all-clear. Why? Because tsunamis don't come as a single strike. They arrive in waves upon waves, sometimes hours apart, each with unpredictable strength. So even as families waited in shelters, drenched fishermen stood helplessly watching their boats sink, and coastal roads shimmered with salt water, officials urged everyone to remain in place. The fear lingered, stretched out not by destruction, but by uncertainty. Meanwhile, in Hawaii, the arrival was louder, more dramatic. Near Oahu, the waves peaked at nearly 6 feet, surging into harbors, flooding low-lying piers, and smashing small craft against the docks. Sirens wailed as the sea boiled its way into neighborhoods at the very edge of the coast. For hours, Honolulu's airport sat eerily quiet, flights grounded, lights flickering across empty runways. But here too, the worst-case scenario never materialized. Roads inland remained dry, high-rises stood untouched, and by the time the water receded, the damage was minor compared to what had been feared. Yet for the thousands packed shoulder to shoulder on higher ground, listening to radios in the dark, the hours of waiting felt endless. 2 oceanside societies had held their breath. Japan faced the sea with silence, training, and stoicism. Hawaii faced it with noise, traffic, and the watchful presence of soldiers. And when the water finally drew back, both knew they had narrowly escaped something far worse. When the ocean finally calmed, it left behind not ruins, but questions. In Japan, the waiting dragged on. Hours after the last noticeable surge, the Japan Meteorological Agency kept the warnings active. Their reasoning was simple: the sea is deceptive. Even a meter-high surge, if it arrives after people return home, can sweep them away in seconds. So evacuation orders lingered through the night. Entire towns remained on higher ground. Elderly residents huddled in school gymnasiums, children wrapped in emergency blankets, volunteers pouring tea as tired families whispered about the waves. It was not destruction that defined the night in Japan, but discipline. The quiet understanding that patience itself was survival. Only after meticulous monitoring of tide gauges and seismic data did JMA slowly downgrade the alert to an advisory, finally allowing millions to descend back into their neighborhoods. By then, dawn had already painted the coastline. Across the Pacific in Hawaii, the mood was different. The warnings were lifted more quickly. As the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center tracked the diminishing energy of the waves, evacuation orders were relaxed, and families began returning home before sunrise. Relief washed over the islands almost as tangibly as the water had. Cars that had choked the highways hours earlier streamed back toward the coast. Shops reopened, airports resumed flights, and by morning, Waikiki's beaches were once again dotted with tourists snapping photos, as if the night of fear had been nothing more than a passing storm. But the scars of the evacuation lingered. Videos of gridlocked highways, of tourists in panic dragging luggage inland, of soldiers waving helicopters over blacked-out neighborhoods, all became viral snapshots of how Hawaii had faced the sea. The chaos had been real, the fear undeniable. And so, while both Japan and Hawaii escaped the worst, their stories diverged. Japan showed a model of order, its people drilled and prepared, waiting out the danger with measured calm. Hawaii displayed resilience too, but one marked by improvisation, by noise and urgency, by the dramatic weight of military machinery stepping in to aid civilian life. The tsunami had not destroyed them. Instead, it had revealed them. The tsunami of July 30th, 2025 was not the disaster many had feared, but it was a test. For Japan, it was a confirmation that decades of investment in preparedness were not wasted. Their J-alert system worked exactly as intended. Sirens sounded, phones buzzed, and within seconds, millions knew what to do. The evacuation was orderly, the response almost automatic. In a way, it was less about bravery and more about muscle memory, a society that has woven survival into its routine. For Hawaii, the night revealed both strengths and vulnerabilities. The sirens worked, the military stepped in, and lives were saved. But the evacuation was messy. Gridlock, panic buying, tourists unsure of what was happening. It showed that while Hawaii has the tools, it still wrestles with the unpredictability of its population. A mix of locals, visitors, and transients, all reacting in different ways. And yet, neither approach was wrong. Japan's discipline fits its geography and history, a nation that has faced tsunamis for centuries. Hawaii's adaptability reflects its unique position, isolated, heavily dependent on tourism, and with the U.S. military embedded in its infrastructure. What unites them is simple. The ocean remains both lifeline and threat. Technology may improve, warnings may get faster, shelters may grow stronger, but when the ground shakes and the waves rise, every second counts. This time, the sea was merciful. The waves were smaller than predicted, and both Japan and Hawaii returned to normal life. But the night served as a reminder of how fragile our routines are, how quickly the calm can break, and how survival depends not just on systems or sirens, but on the choices ordinary people make when the water starts to move. Because the next time, the sea may not be so forgiving.